Hill. And my guest today is Nanama Danquah. She's a creative writer. She's a speech writer. She's an actor. She is a creative of great proportions. Welcome, Nanama, to I Have a Story to Tell.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, Nanama, I've just introduced you as a creative of great proportions because you are a scriptwriter, you write speeches, you act, you've written a book. You've done so many things in your life. But before we get to that, let's have a little bit about your background. Where were you born? What are your antecedents and all that?
I was born in Accra, Ghana, in Kolebu Hospital. I stayed in Ghana until I was 6, and at the age of 6, my parents moved to the U.S., and I was in the U.S. for the next 24 years, and then I returned to Ghana and taught at Legon, and yeah, that's pretty much it.
So when you left Ghana,
Yes.
you went to the States.
Mm-hmm.
It's a big place. Can you tell me where you went to?
Oh, yes.
The high school and all the little things that you did.
All the little things that I did.
Maybe the big things too.
The big things. Okay. We moved first to Washington, D.C.
Right.
And then we moved to a small suburb, which is where I spent most of my childhood, Tacoma Park, Maryland. And let's see. I was floating and confused and up and down and all around. I went to boarding school for a little bit. And then I graduated from the public high school in Silver Spring, Maryland. And then took a few courses in college here and there. It took me a minute to figure out myself and what I wanted to do. Moved to California, and I moved to California as an actress and pursued acting for a little bit there, and then had my daughter, and then I got a master's degree and was writing and published a book and so on and so forth.
Right. I'm going to go to the specifics. You left Ghana and went to the United States.
Yes.
Obviously, with a name like you have Ghanaian parents. But I have one up on you because I know that you're the granddaughter of a very famous, one of the most famous Ghanaians, J.B. Danquah.
Yes.
So that means that you are of Ghanaian stock. But in reality, your parents, your dad, where did he come from, and your mother?
Oh, my father's Ashanti. My father is not the Danquah. But my father actually comes from quite impressive heritage.
All right.
My father is a Rekubrobi.
Yes.
So he is first cousins with Tarzan, with Charles Rekubrobi.
Right.
And that's on his father's side. And on his mother's side, he's the grandson of Nana Boafo Akoto.
Right.
So, and so he's Ashanti. On my mother's side, my mother is half Achem.
Right.
Her father was Dr. J.B. Danquah. And her mother was Comfort Carbu, who comes also from an interesting stock of people. She was the daughter of Jonas Carbu, who founded New Ningo.
Yeah.
So they moved from Adan to New Ningo, and he founded New Ningo. So that's me all across the Ghanaian map.
Which makes for a very exciting program today. And then you, at 6, you were taken to the United States, and you said you took a long time to settle.
Yes.
You lived in D.C. and in Silver Springs, and then you went to California. But you said you were an actress.
Yes.
What did you act? Were you a stage actress, a film actress?
I was doing stage.
All right.
I was doing plays. And I've done a couple of commercials and, not too much TV and film. And then I stopped acting because I gave birth, and acting is a very physical profession, meaning you have to be somewhere. Whereas with writing, you can just be exactly where you are. You can sit at a desk. So I leaned more into writing, which I've been a writer my entire life. I was the kid who was the editor of the literary magazine at school, the editor of the newspaper, and so on and so forth. I loved books.
So you caught the bug very early in life?
Yes, actually,
the writing bug.
An uncle of mine, he said, I have a poem that you wrote for me when you were 6. And so
right.
I was amazed. And I remember I used to write on the walls. My parents would get very upset. I'd write my poetry and things on the walls when I was a child.
So from being I hear they don't use the word actresses anymore. They use the word actor. So
actor, yes.
Yeah. So you went to California. What made you take that long trip from the eastern seaboard to the western Pacific?
I wanted to get away from everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially my family. I wanted to leave everybody, and so I kept going until I hit water.
What was that about? I mean, wanting to leave your family. It's not a very Ghanaian thing, is it?
Well, I don't know. Is it?
Well,
is it?
I'm asking you.
I don't know. I don't think that we're monolithic people. So I don't think you can say one thing is strictly true. Ghanaian and one thing is not. It was just a sense of needing to find myself and needing to individuate and figure out what I wanted to do. I had very different aspirations than my parents had for me.
What did they want you to do? Become a lawyer, a doctor, what?
Business.
Okay.
Yeah. And actually, I have to say, I did take some business courses in undergraduate, and as a freelance and independent artist, I'm really grateful to have taken those courses. They really came in handy for me. It was good knowledge to have, but it was in my business law class that I decided I can't do this anymore. We were studying case law, and there was a specific case, I still remember. It was Lucy versus Zamer. And these two men, Lucy and Zamer, their surnames, were really good friends. And they would go out drinking, and their wives were friends. And so one night, somebody bet somebody his farm. And so he lost the farm, and he gave him the farm. He wrote the deed over on a napkin.
Yeah.
And so it was, a court case that was based on whether this was coercion, whether the person had the presence of mind to be able to do that. And I kept raising my hand and saying, but what happened to the wives? Were they no longer friends? Did they still go out? This big thing that has intruded on their community. How did it find shape in the community? And my teacher said, Ms. Danquah, this is not a creative writing class. If you are interested in creative writing, I suggest that you go down the hall to the right and register. I was so ashamed. I collected all my things and I left the room, and I kept walking out of the school, and I never returned. I never returned to complete my undergraduate degree.
So what happened? I mean, wasn't that a good thing? Wasn't that an angel telling you in very difficult ways to go and take the right profession that you wanted to take, which is writing? In hindsight, you can say that. I mean, the stories sound wonderful in hindsight, but when you're living the story, what it sounds like is
your daughter who doesn't know what she wants to do, who's floundering, has dropped out of college. God help us all. And so I remember, much to great disappointment, my father telling my younger siblings, do not follow in her footsteps. She is a loser. And it was deeply hurtful at that age. It was deeply hurtful. But what do you say to prove somebody wrong when everything is inside of you, when the knowledge that you can do something is a seed that's inside of you alone, and the rest of the world, what the world sees is an affirmation of that.
So are you the eldest of your siblings?
I am the eldest of two by the same parents.
Okay.
Yes. My sister is 9.5 years younger than me. My sister by both parents. She's 9.5 years younger than me. So I was raised essentially as an only child because the gap was so huge.
Yeah.
By the time that my sister was born and about 4 years old, I left to go to boarding school. So we never really, it wasn't like siblings who grow up together in the same home. And the youngest of my father's children is younger than my daughter.
Oh, good.
She's about a year younger than my daughter. So I never, grew up with her.
I see.
Yeah.
But you just mentioned boarding school. We'll be going in and out of your story.
Okay.
What was boarding school like for someone who'd come from Africa at 6, and then you were thrown into that world?
Oh, it was delightful. I both loved it and hated it. I loved being away. I loved the being away and being independent. It was, I think that the racism, I didn't know it by that name at the time, but the racism.
Was it a predominantly white school?
It was. There were only 9 black people out of about 210.
And this was where in the United States?
In Middleburg, Virginia.
Okay, Virginia.
It's a very tiny, tiny little town in the Blue Ridge Mountains.
Okay.
In Virginia. It's a good school, but it was back then. It was a heck of a place to be black. They were. This was in the 1980s, and they were 10 years maybe at best into integration. Into having integrated. Less than that. I think they were maybe 5 years when I started going into being an integrated institution.
So what kind of racism did you come across?
It was a combination of classism and racism, because of course in the United States the assumption is that if you are black you are of lower class, and so it was a combination of that. So sometimes it would be like I went home for the weekend with a friend from school, and her mother made fried chicken, and she said she had made chitterlings, and I was like, what are chitterlings? And then it took me a minute to figure out it was chitlins that she was saying that she had made, and she said, oh, she'd made stuffed chitterlings. And when I called to say I had gotten there safely and everything, and I was telling my mom that she had made this food, she said, stuffed chitterlings? She said, oh, she didn't clean the intestines, don't eat it. So,
Please explain chitlings to the audience, because I understand what chitlings are.
Oh, they're just intestines. They're intestines.
The offal, yes.
Yes, exactly. And, of course, you're meant to clean them, the insides, before you cook them. Because I did say, oh, how did you stuff them? And she said, they came that way. So and for dessert, we had watermelon.
Oh, naturally. So you've got to explain that in America, they believe that black people just like chicken and they have watermelon.
Yes.
Why? Tell me.
I mean, it's a racist trope.
Okay.
It's been around since since the times of slavery, you know. And some of it's because that's what was fed. Those were the things, the drumsticks and things like that were the things that the white people were not eating.
Right.
The liver, the intestines, the kidneys, the gizzards, these types of things were discarded meats that were given to the slaves.
Right.
So, yeah.
Oh, I see. So you ended up in a school, you met racism, but how did you overcome it?
Did I?
All right. You're here and you're well balanced. So.
Did I? I don't know. I don't know if I overcame it. I think that we carry these scars with us. I think that the idea of overcoming something, I lived through it, but I think that you carry the battle scars with you. I think that they shape who you are, who you will become, and how you see the world. Yeah. So I do. I carry that with me, and it goes. I carry it into my work. I carry it into. I mean, I understand, having been in that environment, how those people in environments like that, see the world, how they see people like me, and so that informs my work.
Right.
Yeah.
Was it in any way, I mean, naturally, if you say you were scarred, it must have been hurtful. And that was why I was talking about how you overcome it, because some people never recover from experiences like that. But Nanama, it's you're telling us your story. Let's take a break now.
Okay.
Nanama Danquah is my guest on I Have a Story to Tell on ZFM 101.9. My name is Fritz Baffor, and it's now time for her first music selection. So what song did you choose, the first song that you chose?
The first song that I chose was by Amanzaba, Nat Brew.
I see.
Wogbe.
Wogbe.
Yeah.
Okay.
Z 101.9 FM.
Project Beke by Amanziba, and that's the first selection by my guest, Nanama Danquah, who is a creative artist, a writer. She does all things, short stories, essays, scripts, speeches, and everything. So you moved to California. Where did you move to in California?
Oh my gosh. First I moved to a small town in Orange County, which is the county right next to Los Angeles County. I had an uncle who lived there. Right. And he said, "Oh, this is like the suburb of Los Angeles." And I went, and it was not the suburb of Los Angeles. It was, they used to call it behind the orange curtain, because it was like another world entirely, because it was this sort of Republican enclave.
Right.
And very conservative, very white, with the exception of the Mexicans, who were, of course, sort of like subservient to the white people. They were the gardeners, the maids, things of that sort. And I lived there for about a year.
Right.
Until I could sort of get my bearings, and then I immediately left, so.
Why did you leave? Tell me.
Because I wanted to be where the action was. I was young.
Oh, so there was, it was
there was
dead zone.
It wasn't what I came for. I didn't come to work at an insurance company. I came to act. I came to be in the theater. I came to, and in Orange County, I was working at an insurance company and, sort of on a track to become a supervisor. I was actually promoted to supervisor. And, anybody else would have been happy to get this promotion to supervisor. I had an anxiety attack so bad it landed me in the hospital.
Really?
Yes.
That bad?
Yes. It was because I had anaphylaxis. I was, I couldn't breathe, and then I broke out into all kind of hives, and I had to go to the hospital. Yeah. And that was from being promoted in the insurance.
That's not good for you at all.
So,
it's amazing.
Yeah.
To the audience out there, this is her story, and she's telling you about when she left the Eastern Seaboard, which is Virginia and Baltimore and all those places, for LA in California, and she found herself in a place where
Orange County.
All right.
Yes.
So I'll always now remember Orange County with hives.
As well you should.
Anyway, you left Orange County, and where did you go, or what did you do?
I left Orange County and I moved to Los Angeles proper.
Right.
And I rented a little place, and I was suffering from really intense depression. And so there were days that I was just not functional at all. And I really lucked up, because the person that I rented from, he was this Israeli, he is this Israeli gentleman. And he said, one time I came and I said, "Oh, I only have half of the rent. I don't have the whole rent." And he was like, "But I'm not renting you half of an apartment. I'm renting you the entire apartment." And he said, "Can you type?" And I said, "Yes." And he goes, "Show up at my office at 9:00 on Monday." So I said, "Okay." So I went and I would work for him sometimes, and I would, help clean up around, help rent places and things of that sort. And he was, in the Talmud, which is the, in
the
Jewish,
book.
Yes. In the Talmud, it says every blade of grass has an angel that watches over it, bends over and says, "Grow, grow."
That's beautiful.
He was one of my angels and continues to be. He was my landlord for 30 years.
Really?
He was my landlord. I lived in almost every single building that he owned. I've probably lived in it. I've been a manager for him. And when I was broke, and had a 3-month-old baby, and my daughter's father had put us both out because that was not the life he envisioned for himself. My former landlord came and picked me up, and he installed me in one of his apartments as a manager, and I didn't have to pay rent for a couple of years. I was just really, it was one of the great blessings of my life.
You must have gone through a harrowing time, depression. Thrown out of a home with your partner and all that.
Yeah.
You've mentioned the angel, but how did you rally round to stand on your own 2 feet? What gave you a sense of direction, and how did you move out of it? The blue funk.
Depression goes away on its own. If it's left to its own devices, it will go away. It'll also return. And so I went through that for many, many years. And then in 1992, I was on the phone with a colleague who turned into a very dear friend, Greg Tate, who's since passed away. And he said to me, You're depressed, you know that. And I said, What are you talking about? Because the way he said it just made it seem
very casually.
Yeah, and it made it seem so, severe in a way that we don't really discuss depression, and we should. And he said, my mother suffered from depression, and for years and years, I'd like for you to meet her. And he was from the DC area. So he actually lived in New York, and he said, come to New York. And so he flew me to New York, and I went down to DC with him, and I met his mother, who was Florence Tate. She was an amazing woman. She was the press secretary for Jesse Jackson during his presidential run. She was the press secretary for Mayor Marion Barry. Powerful woman who would suffer from extreme bouts of depression to the point where she would have to have electroshock therapy.
Really?
Yes. And she would suffer particularly from seasonal depression. And I write about it in my book, Willow Weep for Me, A Black Woman's Journey Through Depression, how in the 60s, when she was suffering from depression, because she was such an incredible activist, she went to try to figure out what was going on with her. And one doctor said, oh, you have housewives syndrome.
What is that?
And then she went, and this other doctor said, you have Lumumba fever, because Lumumba had just been killed. So he was saying she was upset because of Lumumba, because she was an activist. And finally she was diagnosed, and she began treatment. Yeah. So sitting and talking to her was really incredible for me. And I learned a lot about myself, and I went into therapy. I went into therapy, and that's when I started really coming to terms and dealing with a lot of stuff like childhood sexual abuse and neglect and, these kinds of things. Coming from a culture that I came from, in a lot of Black cultures, a lot of African cultures, silence is expected when people are dealing with horrible injustices. And you're not meant to say anything, because how we appear on the surface is what is more important than what an individual is dealing with in their internal reality. And in fact, it should be the opposite.
That's very interesting. I think that is a subject for a lot of discussion because right now it seems as if the world is now moving into trying to understand mental health and which is a good thing.
Yeah.
Because what you're talking about, I think a lot of people have gone through it.
Yeah.
So,
and I don't understand even why we have a different name for it. I don't understand who decided that below the shoulders is one thing and above the shoulders is something else,
right.
because in the same way, I try to explain to people, because when they think of mental health, like if somebody says, I have a mental illness or I have a mental health issue,
Yes.
people think, oh, hey, a second, he's great, he's gone mad, or whatever, But the reality of it is that the way that you catch a cold or you have a virus and then you overcome that, you heal from that. And that helps you in the future if you feel like you're coming down with a cold or to protect yourself from getting a cold. And then there are also illnesses that people have that are long-term that they have to learn to live with. And mental health is no different than physical health in that way. There are people who go through bouts of things, sometimes brought on by grief, sometimes brought on by trauma. It's not necessarily that they're born with it. We all have the capacity to fall ill in many, many different ways. And then there are people who have serious long-term illnesses, which we also have physical versions of. And, that can be maybe schizophrenia or something else.
Right.
So we have to really start learning to talk about mental health.
I think that is slowly happening in Ghana.
Yeah.
We're trying to break the silence because,
Yes.
a lot of people are now facing the problems of mental health as a result of lifestyle. So, this is, I have a story to tell. My name is Fritz Baffo, and we're on ZFM 101.9. My guest is the dynamic Nanama Danquah. And she's telling us a wonderful story, and it's the ebbs and flows of her life. She left Ghana when she was 6 and went to America, went through all kinds of things. So she's telling us about it. So you met Florence Tate, and she helped you look at yourself in another light.
Yes. Yes,
and
she did.
So what did you do from then?
I got help. I started having therapy. I even went on medication at times until I learned myself, and I learned some of what triggers me, and started walking in my own truth. And I have my own health routines, and everybody is different. So I try not to, people want to say, oh, well, what did you do? As if somehow it'll work for them. I think whatever works for you. If it's medication, take your medication. I think if it is yoga, then do your yoga. I think if it's meditation in the morning, then do that, So there are some things that are proven that work. One is alcohol is a depressant. So if you are in the middle of a cycle of depression, don't drink, because you immediately feel better, but alcohol is a depressant. So at the end of that sort of euphoria, you'll feel worse, actually. And that's the first thing. The second thing, obviously, is drugs. Don't do drugs, But diet plays a major, major part. Sleep plays a major, major part. And interestingly, waking up in the morning and going outside immediately for a walk. Having the sunlight, what the sunlight does to your retina. Once the sun makes contact with the retina, it adjusts your circadian rhythm, and that adjustment sort of resets your cortisol levels, it resets your melatonin levels, it resets everything, your serotonin, your melatonin, your cortisol, all of that. So just even being outside 15 minutes, within 30 minutes of waking up, helps.
Yeah, I'm happy you're saying this. Way back last year, we had a young lady who was a naturopath.
Naturopath, yes.
And she told us this, and
Yeah.
I think that it's a very strong and a moot point.
But you have to do it, because even as I'm sitting here saying it, I haven't done it in 2 weeks. You actually have to be compliant. And so
Yeah.
I've been because just coming back, my life has been just so crazy.
Yeah.
And so many obligations. And so I found myself getting up and just being late already to, the driver is waiting and I'm late and I have to just shower and go. So I'm not quite yet on the schedule that I need to be on. In the last week or so, the last maybe 4 days, I've felt myself moving toward the entry point of a depressive episode. I can feel it when I'm there, and so that's when I have to pull back and cancel obligations and really get into
Work on
my
it.
own self-care.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's get back to after you met Florence Tate
Yes.
and you went through the help and assistance that she gave you and the remedies for your depressive state.
Mm-hmm.
You must have grabbed something from her because you are what you are, which stems from her a bit because she was a writer. And she
Florence was not actually
a writer, but I
yeah.
mean, she was handling
Oh,
a
yes.
politician. So
Oh, yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
So tell us about after Florence.
Oh no, after Florence Tate, I've always been a writer, and
Right.
I've always been ambitious. I've always been ambitious. I will say that. I've always been ambitious in the sense that I am, back when I was young and I got to LA, I mean, I was almost feral. I was like, I will, do whatever to succeed.
Right.
And whatever, of course, being within my own boundaries and limits of decency and, ethics, to succeed. But, so I was writing really regularly.
Even when you were living in the house of the Israeli angel.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Well, I lived in his house up until I
Right.
bought my own house in 2012.
So you were writing. And what were you writing?
I was writing poetry. I started out as a poet. I was writing poetry. And then I'll tell you something. I moved, after my daughter was born, I moved back to D.C. for about a year.
Right.
And I was doing a poetry reading, and someone came up to me afterwards and said, I really like your work. Do you know how to write prose? And I said, well, yes. And I didn't. And I said, well, yes. I mean, I hadn't written prose since high school papers. And so he said, oh, good. I'm an editor for the Washington Post, and I would like for you to write an article. So I said, okay. And so I took the assignment and then started studying like crazy and, did everything and published it. It was well received.
What was the title? What was the theme of that? Your first
My first article.
foray into journalism.
Well, it was called The Death of Courtesy.
All right.
And what it was is there was a sign that said courtesy, and it was almost like a headstone somewhere in D.C. And he wanted me to research whether that was like a person that had died or whether it was courtesy, like our courtesy with one another.
Yeah.
So I went and I spoke with people, some of the unhoused people in the neighborhood, some of the people who hung out on that corner, and then wrote a very poetic prose piece about the death of courtesy and that it may have been a person, but yet even so, it signifies the death of courtesy within our society.
I know we're on a roll here, but I'm going to stop and ask you: do you believe that courtesy is dead?
I believe
From your African and American experience?
I believe in America, there's a real absence of courtesy. Yes, I do.
How do you determine that?
Well, I mean, even just the very basic things like, greeting one another, and just stopping to greet one another. In America, people don't, no good morning, no good afternoon, no how are you. It's just, Fritz, I need this.
Yeah.
As opposed to, oh, good morning, how are you?
Right.
And so that there's a certain lack of that courtesy of being able to sort of see how somebody is, want to even know how somebody's condition is, how are you doing today? And so there's that, when you walk through a door that somebody has opened, saying thank you, people don't do that.
But they don't do that here too.
Well, then there's a certain depth of courtesy there too then. But, I find that in many ways we're going the way of the rest of the world. I mean, hopefully we won't go all the ways of the rest of the world. But yes, I do think that I wouldn't say dead, I'd say dying.
Okay.
I mean, dead is a sort of a pretty final state.
Right. Yeah, let's get back to your story. So you wrote the article or the piece on the death of courtesy, and where did it get you?
It got me a great relationship with the editor, and in that we had some conversations, and he decided, oh, I want you to do this other piece. Because I said, this was like in 1993 or 94, and I had said to him that after my daughter was born and I couldn't really work because I wanted to be home with her, and also I couldn't afford childcare, that I saw an ad in the paper for phone sex workers. And so I did that from my house.
What exactly is phone sex?
Horny men call the number and spill out their fantasies, and you listen and help them, ejaculate, I guess.
Wow, this is...
So, yeah.
And you had to do that.
Yeah.
Were you paid well?
I mean, yeah, it paid fairly well. But, they also charge these men a lot of money. But, I was doing it while, I'm sweeping and I'm chopping onions and I'm boiling baby food and stuff. So it's,
Did you have an ethical crisis on that? Or you just did it?
I did. It was some of the people who would call. It was just really frightening. It was really frightening to know that so many people did call, and then some of the fantasies that people would talk about were really disconcerting too, where, they wanted the person on the other end of the line to pretend that they were their mother-in-law or their daughter or their, it just made you kind of see this underbelly of humanity that I didn't know existed
Real
before.
darkness.
Real, yeah. So I wrote an article about that.
Right.
It took me some convincing to do, but I'll tell you why this article was important. I said no when he said write an article. I said, no, I'm not doing that. And I said, my parents live in Washington. This is their hometown paper, and I don't want to do that. Shame is a very powerful thing in the culture that I come from.
Yeah.
And then he said, well, are you ashamed that you did it? And I said, no, I'm obviously not. And he said, if you're going to be a writer, and if you are going to write your truth, the first shock will free you. The first time that you sort of make yourself vulnerable in that way and put yourself out there, it will free you to be able to write your truth. Otherwise, you're always going to be hiding behind what will this person say? What will this person do? And you're not living or writing your truth. So I said, And that made me think. And I said, I'll do it. I will do it. And so I thought it was going to be like the first piece that I wrote on the death of courtesy, and that it would be sort of in the middle of that section of the paper. No, but they had it on the front, and it was top of the fold.
Right.
And it was called Hanging Up on Phone Sex, and my name was huge underneath of it. And so then I said, uh-oh, and I called my father, and he said, oh, everybody's calling to tell me about this article you wrote. And it was like, And so it seemed that people were sidestepping the theme of the article, and they were just happy that I had published in the Washington Post and I was top of the fold. It was only, the article went out on the wire service.
Yeah.
And it was my uncle, Paul Danquah, in Morocco. He was living in Morocco at the time, and he phoned me. And he said, if you need money, darling, call me. No need to prostitute yourself.
On that note, let's have your second selection, and we'll take a break. This is I Have a Story to Tell on ZFM 101.9. My guest is Nanama Danquah, and she's being very brave here. She's telling me some things that are woo. And this is Fritz Baffo on I Have a Story.
So Strong Inside by Lyra.
Good.
Z 101.9.
Something Inside So Strong.
Yes.
Originally sang by Labi Sifre.
Yes.
Yeah, beautiful. Beautiful song, and the words really echo. And from what you've told us, it is an epitome of you, isn't it? In a way, you're singing a song to yourself.
Yes.
Anyway, you've told us something wonderful, that you had to do all kinds of things to keep alive, and then you were writing. I won't talk about the phone sex too much here.
No, let's not talk about it
Too many
anymore.
people who like salacious gossip will be excited about it. I don't want to please them. Anyway, so you did the article, and you went on. You were working for the Washington Post as a part-time.
It was a freelancer.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I started, having that byline enabled me to also write for other publications.
Yeah.
What was happening at that time is the United States was moving slowly toward where it is now with its immigration.
Right.
And I was undocumented. And I had come to the country actually documented.
Right.
My father actually worked for the Ghana embassy, and the last visa that I had was a diplomatic under a family, diplomatic visa as a child of a diplomat. And once he stopped working for the embassy, that visa lapsed, and neither one of them bothered to correct my situation as they were in the midst of their divorce.
Right.
And so they both, my father naturalized, so he's a U.S. citizen, and my mother got her green card, and I turned 18, and they were like, good luck with that.
Really?
And so I spent most of my young adult life trapped, and I was undocumented, and I was unemployable within the mainstream ways of being employed because all the loopholes were closing around me, you see. When I moved to the United States as a child, I was able to get a Social Security card, and because I was a young person, I was able to get a driver's license once I turned, 16, 17, 18. And neither one of those identifications said not eligible for employment, as later they would require these institutions to do for immigrants.
All right.
So when they changed the law and they said you had to produce these documents, I would produce the documents, but then later it just became more and more difficult. And so because they were asking you to produce more and more, so I could not work through legitimate means. So I had to work for some reason in the arts. They don't ask you a lot of those things because a lot of the arts, you're not on payroll per se. They
Right.
pay you. It's a work for hire. They pay you and then you just keep going. And so really my existence depended on me being a professional writer. So when they say, if you want to write, only 4% of people are able to make a living from it, I had to become one of those 4%. My life and my daughter's life depended on it. So I did. And ultimately it opened up a gateway toward, towards citizenship.
How did
a
you,
gateway toward.
How did you do that? I mean, I'm sure right now you are legal.
Well, yes, I got a visa. It's called an Einstein visa. The actual name of the visa is a person of extraordinary ability in the arts.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's what I ended up getting.
And who helped you get that? Because you were in the States already.
Oh gosh,
it was a process.
It was a process. I started the process, first of all, finding a lawyer is difficult because there's so many scammers and people who will take your money and say, okay, pay me all of it and then take a plane to Ghana and wait for your interview with the U.S. Embassy, but you have no recourse. They have all your money.
Yeah.
And then you've self-deported, essentially.
Well, we'll be talking about that, so I don't want to
Yeah.
jump the gun because I'm going to talk to you about the wherefores of people who want to go to America illegally or legally and all that. We'll go
Okay.
there. But right now, let's tell your story. Your
Okay.
story as a writer.
So my writing is what has opened doors and kept a roof over my head.
Okay. Now, you said earlier that you'd written a book.
About depression.
Yes.
Yeah.
And when did you write that?
I wrote that book. The book was published in 1998.
Yeah.
And when I got the book deal, it was meant to be an article.
Right.
And I tell you, I've just had these incredible angels in my life. The editor at the Washington Post, he hadn't heard from me in a while. And I said, I've been dealing with depression. And he said, oh. And he said, I read this book called by William Styron called Darkness Visible. And I said, yeah, he was a rich white man. That's not the depression I'm dealing with.
Right.
I'm a poor black woman, And so I started talking about the differences, which it's the same illness, but as with any illness, so much informs it. Poverty, whether you're urban or rural, whether, so many things inform the care that you receive. Or even how it's regarded by those around you, And so he said he thought that was really interesting and that I should write about it for the Washington Post. And I said, okay. So I wrote this super long, I knew by the time that I was at like 15,000 words that he was going to have to edit it, but I figured that's his job. He's an editor. He'll figure out how to make it fit into 1,200 words. Right. And so I gave it to him, and he said, I don't want to edit it. I think you should just keep writing. I think this is a book. And I said, what? And the idea of me writing a book was as foreign as the idea of me, climbing the Himalayas or something. It was just this, me write a book? What? And so I just said, okay, whatever, thank you. Because I just thought this is a paycheck that I'm not going to get because he's not going to publish the article. So he took the pages and he said, can I send them to someone?
All right.
And he sent them to an agent that I had previously mentioned to him that I had spoken to, but things didn't sort of work out because she liked my work, but I was a poet and there are very, very few avenues for that. So he sent the work to her, and she called me and she said, oh, this is wonderful, but I'd like for you to shape it into a proposal and to write a sample chapter. And I was like, a chapter? Oh no, I can't afford to sit and write a chapter. Like a chapter? Who's going to pay me? Like, I can't afford to sit and write a whole chapter. And so I said, no, I won't do it. Unless somebody's paying me, like, for sure, I won't do it. She said, well, can I send this out anyway? Now, of course, looking back on this, I feel completely foolish, knowing as I do how the industry works. But she sent it out, and we had like 15 people who were interested, 15 publishers were interested, and they flew me out to New York for meetings. And at that point, that's when I was like, oh, wow, this is real. And so I got a book deal to write this book. And one of the first things I did was a friend of mine, Dick Hebdige is his name. He had wanted me to teach in his program at the California Institute of the Arts. And I said, well, I dropped out of undergraduate. I can't. And he says, you don't have an advanced degree? And I said, no. He said, go get one immediately. And so I went back to school. But I didn't go back for undergraduate. I went to graduate. I was able, because of the work that I had done,
yeah.
to life experience myself out. So I went to graduate school as I was writing my book. I was in graduate school when my book came out.
How well did it do, your book?
It did fairly well. I mean, it did fairly well. It was the 25th anniversary edition was issued April 2023. So yeah, it did well enough.
And so it released you a bit. Did it relieve you of some of
the depression?
No, the depression, but moolah, money.
Well, I mean, it did. But the thing about money is that, it's a bucket with a hole in it.
That's very true.
So you have to keep filling it up, and it keeps going out the other end. And so, yeah, I was able to do a lot of speaking engagements, and I traveled around and I was giving keynote speeches and so on and so forth, a lot of conferences. But then I stopped doing that because I didn't like leaving my daughter.
Now, that was what I was going to ask you. How were you coping with a growing up daughter, while you were going through all these experiences?
Well, I don't know how to answer that. I mean, I did the best that I could by my daughter.
Well, I met
think.
your daughter, and she's a very balanced girl, so you must have done a great job.
Oh, thank you. I think that she'd be the best one to answer that. And I think that as all parents are deficient in some ways, I'm sure that she will have a lot to say about my deficiencies, which I support 1,000% her saying that.
Right. Yeah, so you were able to keep her with you while you were going through all these things?
Yes. Yes, I did.
That's great.
Yeah.
This is I Have a Story to Tell on ZFM 101.9. My guest is Danquah, who is a writer. She's been an actress. She's done a lot of incredible things, and she's telling us a wonderful and unique story. I'm very, very happy to have her on this program. So, Nana, you were in D.C., you were writing for the Post, and you went to New York and everything. Mm-hmm. Then you went back to California. Yeah.
Because of the sunshine.
Tell us about the sunshine.
Oh, well, sunshine for somebody who suffers from depression is medicine, So, I mean, being someplace where it's cold and dreary is not exactly... it's not exactly what you want when you're suffering from depression. I like the California lifestyle.
Yeah, tell us about the California lifestyle, because there are a lot of people out there, my listenership, who would like to know a little bit about that wonderful place, that place everybody talks about, Hollywood and California and all that.
The place of palm trees and...
tell us about it. You're a creative, so you can tell us in your own beautiful description about California.
Well, the thing about California is that the people who are drawn to California are a real sort of odd bunch of creatives and dreamers. And I mean, the place itself is, an homage to vision because it's a desert, and so the palm trees are not native to California. So being able to thrive there, being able to build and create there, that's what draws people to it. And I loved that. I loved not being as buttoned up as New York is, or growing up in DC where it was very, very government, and it was very, even if you were a civilian, if you were going to get a job in DC, you'd have to fill out an SF-171 form. And, everything was in those terms, Very
bureaucratic.
Yeah, it was very much like, what's your salary grade, and what's your, things that I just didn't particularly
So are you
care
saying
for.
that California is laid back compared to DC?
It's completely laid back. I was shocked when I went there and people were coming to interviews in Chaliwote. I was like, wait, what? I was like, what? So, yeah. Yeah, and I liked it. I liked it a lot.
Yeah, then when I was reading a little bit about you, is that you became a speechwriter.
Yes.
What got you into that?
I studied speech writing. It's one of the things that I love. I mean, you can walk into my house at any time and hear me listening to speeches, or, if I'm in the vehicle, as opposed to music, sometimes I'll be listening. I love speeches, and I love how speeches are very much like poetry. And I love how they come together. I love the delivery of them. And part of the training as an actor was also public speaking. And then when I started delivering speeches after my book was written and I started giving keynote addresses, people would ask me to help them with speeches. And so I had some actor friends, some politician friends from DC, that I knew. And they would say, oh, help me write this speech, help me write that speech. And it was kind of this, it was this sort of confluence of all of these very specific skill sets. They were very different, but they were very specific. Having that performance background was one skill set. Having initially been a poet was another skill set. Right. Understanding politics from growing up in a political family and growing up in a political town was another skill set. So understanding how to write in that way. So it was all of these skill sets that kind of came together for this one thing. And I found early on that I was really good at it.
And so I'm not going to go too much into it, but you've written speeches for, who've you written speeches for? I mean, if it doesn't go into your confidentiality per se.
No, it doesn't. I mean, I've written speeches for some actors that nobody here would know. But I've written speeches in terms of for Ghana. I've written speeches for John Mahama, the current president. Yeah. So, that's one person here that people would know.
And what about the States? In the States, you say, the actors, we wouldn't know them, but is it only actors? Haven't you written for governors and things like that?
Yes, and I'm not going to get into those.
All right, okay.
Yes.
Yeah, so speech writing.
Yes,
and you talked about it as a confluence of all the skill sets that you've been through and all that kind of thing. We're going to gradually get back to Ghana. All right.
Okay.
But before we do that, I think we should have your third selection.
Oh my gosh, my third selection. Well, this comes really. This third selection is something that speaks to the speech writing and to my passion of being an activist. It's Wake Up Everybody by Harold Melvin and the Blue Notes.
Okay.
Featuring Teddy Pendergrass.
Pendergrass, yes.
Z 101.9 FM.
soul song. Very, very, very apt. Wake up, everybody. You are a Ghanaian American. You spent most of your life living in the States.
Yes.
But from what I gather from you, you love Ghana, and you've come back to Ghana. After all those wonderful things, and let me remind my listeners that this is Nana Danquah, and she is a writer, she's been an actress, and she's a mother, and she's done so many wonderful things, brave things, because she's met life head on. And she's been telling us a story. She happens to be the granddaughter of J.B. Danquah. And she just told us that she's an activist. And I want to find out whether that comes from her grandfather, the lineage of her grandfather, being one of Ghana's foremost politicians of old. Mm-hmm. You've come back to Ghana.
Yes.
Why did you come back? And are you a political activist in the wording? Are you really a political activist, and why?
Okay, let me just back up a minute and talk about why I came back to Ghana, and then I'll move into the activism.
Yep.
I came back to Ghana because Ghana is my home. I am a Ghanaian, and my parents moved to Ghana moved from Ghana when I was 6. But I think now it's very easy for people to say, oh, you didn't grow up here, or you didn't, you're not from here, when in fact we have to look at the context and the history. And there were a lot of people who my family had to keep afloat from, with remittances. So they themselves were held still somewhere where they couldn't come back because of what was happening in this country also. So there are many ways to be Ghanaian, I guess is what I'm saying. And I know for me, I grew up in a household, my mother we didn't speak English in my house. My mother didn't want that. We didn't eat any American food. We didn't speak English. I know that not every Ghanaian immigrant grows up that way, but I grew up that way. And so for me, returning to Ghana was almost seamless for me, because this is the food that this is food that I love, that I've been eating my entire life. Although I will say, as a child, being sent to school with fish head was not fun.
Whoa, I like that.
So
that could be a title of an article.
All the kids. Usually, I was the one. I sat alone at the lunch table because they'd look at my lunchbox like, "What new and interesting and disgusting thing does she have?" And so the things that I would eat happily at home, I just didn't like taking to school. They were like, "Oh, the head! Look at the eyes," or there was like pig's feet, and it was like, "Ew," So, for years I grew up wanting to sort of have the school lunch with the cute little milk bottle. The cute little milk can. I'm not can, but the carton of milk and the little frozen peas looking kind of mushy and scared on the side. But so I grew up in a very sort of Ghanaian way. And my parents were really, I don't know whether this is good or bad, but they were insular. They socialized with Ghanaians. And so on the weekends, we would go to somebody's funeral, and then the kids would all be shuttled into one bedroom, and the parents would be socializing and eating and talking and this and that. And so that's how I grew up. So it was a very familiar thing. And even though I grew up in the United States, there's still so much that I didn't know because so much is learned in the home. A friend of mine had a New Year's party. This is recent too, like less than a decade ago. And you were supposed to bring a potluck. And so I took chicken. I baked some chicken and I took chicken. And when I went to set my dish in the kitchen, I looked and all the dishes had black-eyed peas in them.
Okay.
And I said, well, what's going on here? And I said, what? I didn't get the memo. Should I have made black-eyed peas? And one of the men that was standing in the kitchen, as people gather in the kitchen, as you know, he said, what white people raised you? And so my friend goes, oh, no, she wasn't raised by white people. She's African. She doesn't know. And so it's just, all the years that I'd been there, nobody had told me that this was an African-American tradition, that Black Americans ate black-eyed peas on New Year's and that it signified...
I didn't know that.
It signified wealth.
Oh, really?
that as many as you ate would be the dollars that you would get. It signifies wealth and well-being. And I mean, I didn't know. So there are a lot of these kind of things that even though I grew up, went to the same school, all of that, I just never learned because so much takes place in the home. So when I'm here, this is my home. I feel very much at home. I mean, are there times when I feel American? Absolutely. There are times when I feel American. But for the most part, when I'm in Ghana, I'm very much.
Yeah, you said coming back was seamless.
Yes.
So you didn't get any culture shocks, any shocks of moving and all that?
No, I can't think of
So you walked in smiling, you met your cousins, hugged them, and they told you things that didn't shock you or didn't surprise you?
I mean, those are individual things. That's not a moving back thing.
Okay.
That's not a moving back issue. I think that the only thing for me that disturbs me greatly about the culture here in Ghana is not getting my change.
Oh.
I don't like that. And I keep a big change purse. So when people are like, they don't give me the change and then they keep my 55 pesos, I'm like, hey. And they say, oh, I don't have to. I say, I have change. And I pull out a big bag and they look at me like, oh man, she's nuts.
But that's not a Ghanaian thing because I don't like people keeping my change. At least tell me that I have the change and
exactly,
and I can say keep it.
Exactly.
I don't think that's a Ghanaian thing per se. It must be something that has just crept into our way of life now.
But they do it all the time, or they say, come back tomorrow. And it's like, why should I come back tomorrow? And how do you know that I'm not coming down from Wa or someplace? I mean, how do you know that there is a tomorrow for me to be able to return?
I keep on telling people that you can go to the bank and get change. If you know that you've got to give change to people,
exactly,
then it makes them trust you. But that's another story.
But also, if you don't have change, why must what you give me favor you?
Yeah.
And not me?
That's a very American thing.
Why must it favor you and not me? Why don't you give me an excess? Okay. So anyway, that's my one thing, my one pet peeve. But other than that, I came back and, I mean, I've always had a huge family. And many, many members of my family were people who I knew them from the States, So these were people that I met. And large numbers of them also returned. In 2000, a lot of people had moved back. I think when Ghana went to move to democracy, a lot of people returned. And so when I came here, the first time that I lived here, it was meant to be temporary. I was a visiting scholar at the School of Communication Studies at Legon.
Yeah.
I was hired by Professor Kwame Karikari, who changed my life completely. But
is he another one of your angels?
He's another one of my angels. I adore that man. But so I was hired, and he had left at that time to start the Media Foundation for West Africa.
Yeah.
And so I met my cousins, and at the end of the year, the only thing that I said I would do different is I told my dear, oh gosh, I miss him, Ferdinand Ayim, the late Ferdinand Ayim. I told Freddie, I said, if I were to come back again, I would like to make friends. I don't have any friends. Everybody I talk to is my relative. I would like to actually meet people who are my friends, And, because the Danquah Ofreata family is also really insular. And so it was like, that was my bubble that I lived in. And I loved it. I love them. I mean, they're my family. I love them. So it's a huge bunch of people, but so yeah. And I did come back. I taught at the Department of English.
What was the experience like?
In the Department of English?
Did you enjoy it?
Oh, I taught under Anyudoho, and he was a wonderful head of department, and just a wonderful person, period. I did enjoy it. I did. I had there were some issues here and there. Some people didn't want to teach with me. They felt that, I don't know, I was a small girl and they didn't want to teach with me, even though I had published more than they had at that point. But the one person who did not feel that way was Kofi Awuno. And
I was going to ask you about that.
We taught a class together. And
Tell us that story, that wonderful story.
Kofi Awuno was he came to because there was one teacher, one professor who didn't want to teach with me and was really just very disrespectful in his not wanting to teach with me. Even after Professor Anyudoho had divided us and said, she'll take Tuesday, you'll take Thursday. Yeah. Nobody would come to his class because he was boring. So nobody would show up at his class, but then I would have a full room of people. So one Tuesday when I was teaching, he just entered the room and just started teaching. And so, it was a very bizarre situation. So then I had been, one day for me, one day for Awuno also. So when he came into class and he thought he was teaching, I thought, oh gosh, here we go again, And I said, this is my class, but you're welcome to teach it if you've come to teach. And he said, oh, no, I made a mistake. Carry on. I'll just sit in the back if you don't mind, because I'm tired, I've come, so I'll just sit. So during the break, he said, you are a really wonderful teacher, and I don't know why we're teaching separately. Can we join the two so we both teach each time? And we can teach together, we can divide it into one half, whatever. And so we just sort of went with the flow, and I adored him. And we would go afterwards to the loggia, which was my little spot. I loved that place. We would go to the loggia.
Tell us about the loggia. There are people out there who don't know anything about
the loggia is this little sort of drinking bar, and they have like kebabs and stuff on campus. And a lot of the professors just go and hang out.
And
unwind, yes. And so we would go there, and he would have his 2 kebab sticks and 1 star beer or club beer. He would have 1 club and the 2 kebab sticks, and he was very specific. That's all he would have. And we would just talk about people who were sitting at the other tables, but not actually about them. We would make up stories like, are they on a first date, or are they married? Or we would create these elaborate stories and take turns kind of either presenting new scenarios or embellishing somebody else's, the first person scenario. And we just had such a fun time.
And that was on with the late Professor Kofi Ono.
Yes.
Yeah. So how did you feel when you heard the news that he'd been murdered in a very bizarre incident in another country?
I was supposed to travel with him.
Oh, dear.
I was supposed to go, well, not with him together, but it was a literary conference. And it was something that I had wanted to do, but I had to work. I had to be in New York because President Mahama was delivering a United Nations address that I was the speechwriter on. So I was stunned because anybody who knows Prof. Awuna also knows that he rarely went into town. If you say, oh, let's have dinner in Cantonments. He said, no, I'm not going down there. He didn't like to go out in the night, He would go, the most he would do is the loggia and then go home. And so the idea that he was so far away from home, and on the one hand, it made me deeply sad. On the other hand, it seemed a very fittingly poetic way for him to exit.
Well, I have a story to tell on 101.9 FM ZFM. The program is I Have a Story to Tell. My name is Fritz Baffo, and my guest is Nanama Danquah, who has lived in the States. She's now back. And this time she says she's back. Are you back for good?
I am back for good. This is my home base.
So why did you decide to pack your bags and come back home? I guess the word home means that it's a foolish question because you're back home.
It's not a foolish question. I think as I'm getting older, I'm not a spring chicken anymore. As I'm getting older, I prefer this way of life to what I was living in the U.S. and then also to what the U.S. is becoming.
Now tell me, what is the U.S. becoming?
It's becoming a place of really incredible hate. And it is seething with hatred, antipathy, and just division, and, I read a story yesterday about a woman who blocked inside an apartment complex, the parking garage, who blocked the vehicle to, her neighbors who were trying to exit. Her neighbors were black and brown.
Yeah.
Blocked the vehicle and then called ICE and would not let them pass until ICE had come for ICE to take them away. ICE being the immigration and customs enforcement, for ICE to take them away. And of course, it ended up that they were legal and American and were exactly where they were supposed to be. But the idea that individual people randomly, and this is not an aberration, things like this are happening left, right, center. There was a company in Washington that hired a bunch of immigrants knowing that they were undocumented, as many companies do, but a lot of these companies will pay the people and the people continue to work. This company hired these people to do construction work, to build something, and then when the people were done working, they called ICE, so that way they wouldn't have to pay. So
I can't believe that.
Oh, this is happening, and so much worse, so much worse. And what is also happening with ICE is the people who are working with ICE are masked. So they're people who have no name tags, who are masked, who basically just come and abduct you, And the idea that this is happening in a legitimate nation, is it just feels surreal to be even able to say that people who are masked and unidentified with weapons can just collect you and ask questions later. They don't have to show a warrant or anything. And the Supreme Court is okay with this.
So it's a very, very terrible situation in reality. But there's something that I've noticed, actually, which has got nothing to do with the tensions in America per se. But it seems as if a lot of the Ghanaians who go abroad do not want to grow old in America. Have you come across that sentiment or that?
Yes.
Yeah. Why?
I don't know. I think growing old, I mean, America's a lonely place. And I think that a lot of the Ghanaians, people love Ghana. The Ghanaians who are abroad, they create their own little mini Ghanas.
Yeah.
They replicate all of the Ghana Association here, the Susubribi Society here, the this, the that. And so they love their home country and they want to come back. And I think some people leave, which is one of the failings of Ghana, is that there are limited opportunities for people and they feel they must leave.
Right.
And so that's one of the failings that hopefully this president and subsequent presidents will work on, is the fact that there are limited opportunities, particularly for young people. And there's so much talent that is just squandered.
All right. We'll get back to that after your fourth selection.
Okay. My fourth selection is The Greatest Love of All, with the Whitney Houston version.
Okay. Greatest Love of All by Whitney Houston.
Yes.
Benson for the film track of The Greatest about Muhammad Ali. And just before we listened to this song, we're talking about talent, the youth in Ghana.
Yes.
The demographics from the last census says that over 80% of Ghanaians are under the age of 55, maybe even more than that. And so therefore we have a very young population.
Very.
And the rest of the world is worried about the fact that Africa has got a very fast-growing population of very young people, while their populations are aging and
dying
vanishing,
off.
dying
Yes.
off. So there could be an imbalance. But we're not doing anything for our youth here, from my point of view, and I should be asking you that. What is your take on that?
Wow, I would have to say that I agree that we need to do more, that what's being done perhaps is not enough because we have such a huge population of young people. I would have to say, looking beyond just Ghana into all of Africa, I think that part of the problem is the old leadership. You have people who are leading nations who can't use computers, and meanwhile we're already on AI. People don't understand how things work, and if you've got this huge group of young people, and then you've got people who are older who are not
Tech savvy, yes.
or just speaking their language, don't really understand what is happening. The change that's upon the world is much the same as the change that was upon the world in the 1920s, when you were going from using horses to using vehicles,
Right.
when you were going from an ice box to an actual refrigerator.
Right.
When you were going from boats now slowly into passenger airplanes. There's a whole shift. The world is changing. And so leadership has to change with that. And I think that becomes the issue in many, many countries, is that the leadership is just too old.
Yeah, there's another factor that is coming from the other side, that with information technology, information is almost instant, and it doesn't discriminate as to whether you're old or young.
No.
All right. But I think that the problem is in the analysis of the information. All right. An older person may have a different take on the information that is coming, and it may be more efficient. But so we can't really rely only on the youth. But
I'm not saying to do.
No.
I'm not saying to do away with older people.
I'm just saying that. I was just going to ask you a question based on that. How do we get around that? I mean, because you talked about talent, and I think that when it comes to mentoring, I'm not seeing a system of mentorship in Africa.
I agree with you.
You understand? And so I was just going to ask you your take on that.
I agree with you. I think that, who is being groomed now? What 30, 35-year-old person is being groomed now to become the next president? Who is being groomed to be able to take over? Nobody. Yeah. It's these people keep running and running and running, and it's basically, you look and you see, and so then you have to start wondering about the system of politics and the financial aspect of the system of politics, that somebody who was even 35, 40, 45 can't afford to run, without the backing, a large backing. And so we have to start looking at that. We have to really start looking at what is it that we as a society want. And you asked earlier about politics and what I do in terms of Am I political? I'm not. I've never identified with a political party in the U.S. or here. I've never voting. I don't register as a particular party, and I don't belong to a particular party. I've been really strict about that because I want that independence as an artist, as a writer, as a journalist, to be able to not belong,
So you want to be all the time objective.
Yeah, we
without any
are
strings attached.
Exactly. We are in the world without being of the world a lot of times, And so I want to be able to critique, and I want to be able to say, okay, so do I work with some politicians? Yes. Do I work with political parties? No. That's, that's the line, thin as sometimes it may be. And for me, I'm more concerned with issues. I'm really concerned with issues of humanity and inhumanity, issues of social justice, and issues of environmental justice. I'm concerned about the fact that our food is being poisoned by this galamsey. They're finding, even in Agbogboshi market, they're finding high levels of mercury in the vegetables.
Yeah.
I'm concerned about the water that is coming out of the tap, in places like Winneba, which is just like right outside of Accra, which is not to say that it's only when it happens in Accra that it should make a difference. However, I'm saying it's not in some small village, it's creeping in throughout the entire country. I'm concerned about the fact that, there's just there's so much that we need to talk about. I'm concerned also, deeply, deeply concerned about this anti-gay legislation that is being passed. I think that I was driving here and I was listening to somebody talk about all Ghanaians, we respect the rights of all Ghanaians. And it's like, no, you don't, because you can't say that. It's kind of like how in the United States they say all men are created equal, except you, black man. Am I not a man too? Am I not a woman? Am I not a human being? So you can't make these blanket statements of respecting human rights and then decide to disrespect somebody's human rights. Because the very bottom line for me is that God loves the people who we hate. So those of us who are doing it because we believe ourselves to be religious or Christian are just completely wrong. And Jesus Christ proved that in his teachings, that the people who were hated, the people who were discarded, were the ones that he loved and embraced. And so I find it to be really sad to me that we as a nation are moving in that direction. And I don't even feel like getting into the topic of right or wrong in terms of somebody's behavior or what they're doing, because I cannot be the judge of that. If you think that it's wrong and it's ungodly, let God handle that. That is not your job. Your job is to love. That is your job.
That's very strong. If we start talking about it, we will not end the program. So, and I'm not sidestepping it.
No, I understand.
I'm just saying that what you've just said about galamsey and about the human rights of others and all that is very much something that Ghanaians should seriously think about. We shouldn't just sweep it under the carpet. Now, you are a creative writer.
I am.
You've been an actress, you're a speechwriter. Therefore, you must be concerned about education. What have you seen about the educational system in Ghana, and do you think it's creating a foundation for a better tomorrow?
No, is the short answer. No. I think that, one of the things that I used to tell my students sometimes is whoever passed you to allow you to be here in my classroom did you a disservice, and I think that we need to stop doing that as instructors, because, for me, when I was teaching at Legon, it was really interesting, the partnership that I was making, because every morning I would get up and I would drive my daughter to GIS. And I would pray that whatever teacher she had would take as good care of her and to give all their knowledge to her like I was doing with my students.
Yeah.
And so that, for me, was a real mandate when I went into my classrooms.
Yeah.
And I gave, I believe, 1,000% and then some to my students. And I would like to see more of my colleagues who are in education really understand that is what they're tasked to do, is to give. You know, they're not tasked. You know, one of the things that I joke about with one of my former students, Ernest, is the first day that I met him, he ran up to come and grab my bag. And I said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Give me my bag." And I said, "Your mother didn't send you to school to carry my bags. She sent you to school to learn," you know? And so I feel that sometimes we get lost in other aspects. We get lost in treating young people as our servants and send them to go and get this, carry this bag and do this. Don't talk back to me. Don't challenge me. When in fact, that's what you want. You want them to challenge you. You want them to go beyond you. You want new ideas. You want to empower them to think for themselves and to think outside of the box.
Nanama Danquah, my guest on I Have a Story to Tell on ZFM 101.9. Your life journey has been very, very interesting, and I think there's so much more we can talk about. But
I can't believe that you've gotten me to talk about this much.
Yes, but that's the whole idea of this program. And as we are coming to the end of the program, we have to have your last selection, and then we'll say goodbye to the listenership outside. So what's your last? Okay,
I have to qualify it really quickly in like 30 seconds. All of the previous selections were about loving yourself, or about loving society and the society that you're creating, or having this determination inside of you. And this particular song is about understanding that you have to also let other people love you, to be vulnerable and to let other people love you. It's called Love's Divine by Seal.
Okay. Love's Divine by Seal.
Yes.
Z 101.9 FM.
Then the rain.
I have a story to tell, and I'm your host. My name is Fritz Baffo. My guest has been Nanama Danquah. Before I go, I realized that we talked so much that we didn't talk about one single thing that you did, which a lot of Ghanaians would have been very interested to know. You were the ghostwriter for my first coup d'etat, which was the first book by our present president. Yeah.
I can't concur or deny that, because ghostwriters are ghosts.
Okay, all right. So we'll leave that spiritually on the side. Nana Ama, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I could sit down and talk to you for hours, but at least we've covered a very important part of your journey.
We have.
And I hope that it's been an inspiration to our listenership out there. I thank you all for being with me on ZFM 101.9. Make a date with us, same time next week. But it's been a pleasure and a privilege to talk to you, Nana.
Uncle Fritz, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Yeah, God bless.
I appreciate it.
All right. So you out there, be safe and stay blessed.
You're tuned in to Z 101.9 FM.